Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts, overlooking the beautiful Fowl Meadow. We're so happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Speaking of family, get ready to meet two incredibly fun sisters, Sabrina and Eunice Moyle. They'll be here talking about their great kids' books. Before we introduce you to our fun sister team, we want to let you know it's getting closer and closer. May 19th is the date. We'll be debuting a special series of Reading with Your Kids episodes that we are calling Solve It. We are producing this series with our friend, our Dean of all things STEM and STEAM, Jennifer Swanson. This is a show that we are producing specifically for you to listen to with your kids, and your kids are going to love it. They're going to have a chance to meet some amazing guests, some engineers, scientists, a Grammy-winning composer and conductor, astronauts, and you're going to find out how they solve problems in their jobs using creativity, critical thinking, and curiosity. It's really going to be inspiring. I've had such an amazing time. You're going to have fun too, and your kids are going to have a blast. It all starts on May 19th here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's the Solve It episodes. Joining us right now from the San Francisco area in the great state of California, we have a sister team on. Two authors of some great books for young kids. Please welcome to the show, Sabrina and Eunice Moyle. Sabrina, Eunice, how are you?
Hello. Doing great. How are you doing? Thank you so much for having us on your show. We're so honored.
Yes, I'm real excited. Just Eunice, Sabrina, and I are doing much better than Skype and the internet are doing today. I think the internet and with everybody Zooming and Skyping and learning online, it's a little overwhelmed, but we can deal with it. So first off, so that people can identify the different voices. Sabrina, you were telling me earlier that you kind of you were able to get out of the city and spend some quarantine time. Looking at the water. That's really, really cool. Why don't you start by telling us about one of your two books, ABC Dance?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So ABC Dance is an animal alphabet. So it's a rhyming dance through the alphabet, starting with aardvarks and a band of baboons and clog dancing camels. And we just go through every letter with a different animal doing a different awesome dance move until they're basically all having this crazy disco dance party by the end of the book. So that is ABC Dance. It's a board book for young readers, a rhyming, dancing alphabet board book.
Wow. I am telling you, my daughter would have loved that. She's 23 right now, but we had a fib. We had a fib and write down a fake age to get her into a dance class when she was 2. She wasn't supposed to be in the class until she was 4. But she just was one of these kids who kept on moving, and it was crazy. So we kind of forged her birthday, and they let her in at 2 years old, and she was 2 years on their roster. She was 2 years older than she really was for like 7 or 8 years.
That is incredible. That is awesome. Yes, she is exactly the type of kid this book is for. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Eunice, what was the inspiration for ABC Dance?
Oh my goodness. Well, all kinds of things. But for one thing, I love hip hop. Weirdly, I'm like, the 47-year-old surrounded by 20 somethings in hip hop class. But so a lot of there's hip hop, there's twerking bunnies and there's suddenly twerking bunnies and gorillas that are getting out with their sweatpants on. I mean, I don't know. I've always loved to dance, although I have two left, physically a little bit dyslexic, but I love it anyway. So this book for me was just such a joy and a pleasure to illustrate because it's all the stuff I love to do too.
I've never heard anybody describe themselves as a dyslexic dancer, but I can understand that.
I get very confused in the mirror. I cannot like reverse at all.
I appreciate that. And I also took some hip hop classes, as I'm quite a bit older than you, but I also took I took some hip hop classes when I was way too old. And
Keep us young. Keep us young.
Yeah, you can say. Now,
that's a state of mind, Jen.
There you go. I had fun. I don't know if anybody had fun dancing around me, but I had a lot of fun. Now, you were mentioning that that you illustrated ABC Dance. Is that the role? Sabrina,
Yeah.
Are you the writer and Eunice the illustrator?
That is correct. I do the writing, Eunice does the illustrating, but it is a very collaborative process. So typically the way that we create a book is that I'll write the first draft and I'll write little descriptions of the illustrations, and then we'll go back and forth, and Eunice will give me input on the words based on what she thinks would make a funny picture, and vice versa, and I give her ideas for the pictures. So we go back and forth a lot. So it ends up being really collaborative.
Now, did you have to calm her down with the twerking bunnies?
You can never have too many twerking bunnies.
That's right. We try to sneak a twerking animal into every one of our books. You've got to entertain the adults as well as the kids, Jen. You got to keep everybody. Especially the adults have to read these books over 1 million times. You've got to keep them engaged. Yes.
That's our secret power, is that there's always a few jokes for the grown-ups.
Well, you are absolutely right about that. My kids are now 23 and 26, but I can still, there are probably a half a dozen to a dozen books that I read at least 1,000 times.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, you have this partnership. Have you been writing books and illustrating books together since you were kids?
Well, yes, actually. When we were kids, we used to come up with children's book ideas, and we used to both love drawing, and I think we both loved writing, and we loved reading, like comic books and children's books and stuff. We grew up overseas, so we moved around a lot, and as a result, we didn't have a lot of access we lived in like China before it opened up to the West and things. So we didn't have a lot of access to fancy toys and a lot of things. So we were really forced to use our creativity from a young age. So yeah, we have been making stuff up and imagining different scenarios and brainstorming together since we were kids.
Wow. That I'm fascinated. I hope you don't mind me asking, but Eunice, living in China before they opened up, we've hosted a number of international students in our home. A number of those kids come from China, and as they share, how they live. They all live in big cities, and it sounds different but very similar to what's happening here in the States. I imagine it was a very different way to grow up when you and your sister were there.
Oh yeah, it was incredibly different. I mean, literally, I don't think anybody had a private car other than government officials. So there were just like a wall of cyclists everywhere you went, for example. But it was actually really one of my favorite places growing up. It was a really fun place to be when you were little because it was very, free, and we could bike anywhere. We could go out on our own like pretty easily. It was fairly, safe, I think. And, but yeah, it was a really interesting experience. Like every year for 2 weeks, our school would do something called the China study trip, where you would get on a train and take a train to rural China and, climb a mountain or visit Buddhist monasteries and all kinds of really fascinating experiences. Like I remember climbing up a mountain, I think it was in 8th grade. And on the way up, you would see these medicine men who would have these sort of rugs out, and on them they'd be selling folk medicine, including things like monkey paws and dried snakes. So it was a very sort of Indiana Jones kind of experience.
Wow.
But it was things like that were just like incredible to see and do.
Wow. Now, have either one of you been able to travel back now that China has opened up its doors and transformed itself so much?
Oh yes, yeah. I've certainly been
Sabrina
back.
has, yeah.
Yeah, I've been back a couple of times, and the transformation is just unrecognizable. I mean, Asia is now more advanced than the United States in terms of technology, and the urbanization is just off the charts. Mm-hmm. So it is totally transformed. We went back. I took my family back about a year ago, and we spent some time in Taiwan and Hong Kong. and did a little trip, through southern China. And it was crazy how much it has changed.
Wow. This is amazing.
When we lived there, everybody still wore the blue Mao Zedong uniforms. Like, every once in a while you'd see somebody trying to capture the sort of Western vibe, but it was really very, very rare.
Right. So you can imagine for us as kids, we were just total sponges for Western culture and just any kind of culture, and we just were forced to use our imaginations all the time. So that definitely bonded us as sisters, and it also made our imaginations incredibly active.
That's incredible. I was going to say, did any of those influences from living around the world find their way into your books these days?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I definitely. I think a lot of diversity in our books in terms of like different animals and that sort of thing. And, that's very much there. And there is just this sort of like irreverence and a quirkiness that I think is a reflection of the way we grew up around so many different cultures. Like we've kind of got an anything goes attitude. And we love that about children because they're so open-minded and so creative and open. And I think that is very much a reflection of all of the different things that we experience. Like, we just love to incorporate just tons of humor and just like little quirky details in all of our books.
And we're also children of the 80s, so that's where all this like neon comes from. It's sort of, and the Asian pop culture, I feel like, is a big influence for the sort of ridiculous cuteness and things like that.
That's awesome. Now, you also have Good Night Baboon. I'm really excited to learn about that.
Yeah, sure. So Good Night Baboon is a bedtime book, and it's a countdown to sleep. So it's both a good night book that goes through the sort of different aspects of the bedtime routine, as well as teaching kids how to count down. So we count down from 10 big baboons who are getting ready for bed, down to, the punchline is really sweet. It's one big hug at the very end. And what's happening is there's always this one baby baboon who is wanting to stay up instead of going to bed. So you get 10 baby baboons get ready for bed. One baby baboon stays up instead. And then you get 9 stinky skunks washing in the tub. And the one baby baboon is always doing what he's not supposed to be doing. He's doing the opposite or doing something silly, or, brushing his bum with a toothbrush instead of brushing his teeth, things like that. But by the end, he's asleep and cozy with his parent, and he gets one big hug anyway, even though he was very, very, naughty, as kids are usual, as kids are wont to do, at bedtime. It's very relatable and typical of kids. So it's both a humorous book and a counting book and just a bedtime snuggling book.
Man.
There's definitely a lot of inspiration from my daughter Imogen, who literally every night suddenly finds an unbelievable well of energy right around 9 o'clock when I'm desperate for her to go to sleep.
I wish you folks, these books were around when my kids were young, because I would make up the irreverent stuff, and my wife and my mom would get so upset with me. It would have been cool to have a book and say, look, I'm just reading the book. It's not my fault. It's
Exactly. I mean, the reason why we wrote it this way is because bedtime can get really stressful for some parents. It can be very conflict-ridden and frustrating. And so we just wanted to give a humorous outlet for that frustration. Every parent, experiences that frustration at bedtime, and we just wanted to make it a source of bonding as opposed to a source of conflict.
That thing where it starts out funny and then it just gets really irritating when you're like staring 9:30 in the face.
Well, you're right, and it's so important that, these daily routines become loving memories and not just conflict, It's
brush your teeth.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't help anybody.
Brush your teeth. Right. Yes, this way you have a little humor in there.
Yeah.
Find the joy in the experience.
I love this. Now, these aren't the only books. These are the latest books. You have a whole library that's available on this really cool website called Hello Lucky. Can you tell us a little bit about the website and about some of the other work that you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So Hello Lucky is the business that we started about 17 years ago. We started by designing and creating greeting cards. And that's where we really honed our craft of humor combined with pithy copy, and just really connecting and helping people kind of connect on an emotional level as well. That all comes through years of writing and creating greeting cards. many of which were targeted at kids. And so we, Hello Lucky is that business, and we continue to create greeting cards. But we also now publish a lot of children's books, and we also design other types of products. So we have like home and gift products and everything from socks to fabric by the yard and things that we've started applying our illustrations and our sensibility to. But really, in 2018, about 2 years ago, we kind of broke through into children's books, and it's been so fabulous. Our books have really been well received. Our first two books were called My Mom is Magical, My Dad is Amazing. Were books just celebrating children's love, unconditional love for their mom and dad, just like tapping into that. And then we also, our next book was a book called Super Pooper and Whiz Kid Potty Power. So that is a really funny, just lots of poop and fart jokes, potty training book. And then from there, we did a book called Kindness Rules, which is really for preschoolers, and it kind of goes over all of the basics of good manners and treating people the way that you would want to be treated. And that also injecting a ton of humor. And from there, we've continued writing books. We have a book called Christmas is Awesome, which is celebrating all the funny things and things that we love about Christmas. And there's a grumpy lump of coal who goes through the whole experience and eventually gets a gift from Santa, even though he was being naughty, right? Yeah, this is our first picture book, and that's called Go Get 'Em Tiger. So that is, we've been busy, and we have lots more books coming out, and we're even working on a children's TV show with the Jim Henson Company. So we really feel like we found our sweet spot with kids. We've always loved creating content for kids, and this is just kind of where we really have realized it's kind of where we're meant to be.
Wow. You know, one of the things that I just realized is as I'm listening to your books about the potty, and I'm looking back at the different guests that we've had on the show. We've had over 700 episodes of the show, and the majority of authors who've come on talking about books with fart jokes in them have been women, which blows me away.
That is really funny. I wonder why. Yeah, why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe they're attracted to me because they words out that I like fart jokes. But
I feel like as mothers, we have a lot of experience with farts.
Especially if you have guys.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm curious about is, writing greeting cards and writing children's books. Those are two very, very different things. Even though people might look at them and say, "Well, there's pictures and it's funny and so they're relatable." But in a greeting card, you have to get a message. You have to tell a story like in a sentence, and that seems it would be incredibly challenging.
Yes, it's true. But, the same thing is true for children's books. You only have, about, 24 to 36 pages. So you do have more, but every page has to work incredibly hard. It has to be really engaging and capture kids' attention. And it almost has to be able to stand on its own, like a greeting card. So it's actually, there's a lot more in common than you would think. And I think the other aspect to writing, that channels over into children's books is that it requires a huge amount of empathy and humor. You really are trying to give people words to the feelings that they may not know how to express, and to do it with humor. And I think that's very much the same way with children's books. We're trying to tap into the feelings and experiences that kids and parents might have but not know how to put into words and pictures. So that's actually very similar too.
That's beautiful. And, one of the things before I go, I definitely have to let Eunice know. I love the artwork that I'm seing. It's really fun. Yeah, I mean, it definitely has that 80s feel with the neon colors and everything. But it's really
everything is better with neon.
I agree. You should have seen a leisure suit I had back in the day. But what advice can you give to a mom or a dad or a caregiver who has a budding artist at home? What's the best way to inspire those kids?
Well, I mean, the one thing my parents always had was tons and tons and tons of amazing, fun picture books with beautiful illustrations that I always got tons of inspiration from. But also now it's sort of amazing the amount of stuff that's online. I mean, being trapped in the house with my children, there's so much incredible, we found a stop animation, camp that you could do that's really cool. And there's just loads and loads of online resources for kids that I think are actually amazing.
That's really
and I think with my parents, they just got me a lot of really great supplies, frankly, and just had them around, like really good markers and like good supplies. And, just encouraged me to draw whenever I could. So.
Yeah, I guess that's something that's real important. If you have a kid who likes to create, at least have some markers, some crayons, and some paper around for them.
Yeah. Lots of stuff. And I think they gave me really like professional level supplies fairly early, and I think that makes all the difference in terms of your success when you draw something or execute on something. It really makes a huge difference to have high quality supplies. Earlier then you don't have to be like a college student or a professional artist to have like really great supplies to get a really good result. And then on top of that, now, there's like my kids love to draw on my iPad, much to my chagrin, because it's always thing. But I have an iPad that you can draw on. That also just opens up a whole world. Also, not as much to clean up. So as much as I am desperately trying to limit screen time and failing miserably, it really is quite handy to be able to just, give them the iPad and be like, do some drawing now. And they actually really love it because it gives them a lot of options in terms of the outcome.
That's awesome. Well, ABC Dance is out, and the Goodnight Baboon. Is there another book in the works that we can look forward to?
Yes, we have another book that's coming out with Workman Publishing, and it's called I Believe in You. So that is going to be a picture book out this fall, and it's all about a little dragon who is trying to learn how to fly, and his unicorn caregiver or parent who is just showing up for him and encouraging him no matter what. He fails, he trips, he tries different things, he gets angry, he goes through all kinds of ups and downs and the kind of that typical roller coaster that we all go through. And it's all about how his caregiver is there for him no matter what. And so that is the book, I Believe in You, coming out from Workman Publishing this fall.
That's awesome. Well, we've had a blast speaking to sister creative team, Sabrina and Eunice Moyle. Remind everybody of your website and where they can go to find out more about your books and your cards and everything else.
They can go to www.hellolucky.com, and then also they can find us on Instagram at HelloLuckyCards. And what we're doing, I'm not sure when this is going to be airing, but we are reading bedtime stories every night at 7:30 on Instagram Live. We're picking all of our favorite children's books and reading them every night to give parents and caregivers a little bit of a break around 7:30 Pacific time nightly.
That's awesome. We want to thank you guys so much. Go to HelloLucky.com. Thanks, Sabrina and Eunice.
Thank you so much for having us, Jed. Best of luck to you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Lillian Lee, a fantastic author who splits her time between Malaysia and the beautiful city of Boston. If you are the author of a fantastic children's book, whether you're living in Boston, Malaysia, or anywhere else in the world, we would love to have you as a guest on the show. Being a guest, it's fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands and thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the contact button. Let us know about your great book. We will let you know the next easy steps. I want to thank the incredible team that helped me make this show possible today. Of course, I want to thank our guests, Sabrina and Eunice Moyle. Please be sure to check out their website. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan. I want to thank my awesome author ambassador, Peggy Cotto. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.